Anyway, he's commenting on the news which came out yesterday from about Yevgeny Prigozhin, who's commonly called Putin's chef because he runs a big catering company in St. Petersburg. He, for example, is the guy who has the contract to supply food to all the schools in St. Petersburg and even provided rations for the Russian army. And some Russian soldiers were sent into Ukraine earlier this year with ration packs which expired in 2015. But anyway, Prigozhin has been a crony of Putin's from way on back. He's also from St. Petersburg. He's a man who spent 9 years in prison for robbery. And by the way, Putin's a real law and order man, which is why he is so chummy with someone who was a violent criminal. But Prigozhin, since 2014, has been rumored to be behind the private military company Wagner Group. But for years and years, he denied any connection whatsoever with it. He said he disavowed being the owner of it or in any way concerned with Wagner Group, scarcely knew what it was about. And indeed, he won libel actions in Russian courts against journalists who told the plain truth that really he is the money and the brains behind Wagner Group. Because you can never keep these things secret for very long. The truth always comes out in the end. And finally, just yesterday in an interview, he acknowledged that yes, he is behind Wagner, that private military company, and says that indeed he founded it. So he has lied and lied and lied and lied for years about this most consequential matter. Why on earth would he finally say, yeah, I did found Wagner Group, if in fact he didn't? So now we know what Putin's right-hand man would tell a blatant lie incessantly for years. And finally, he's told the truth. Block not, this online newspaper came out with it. Block not being like notepad is what it means in Russian. It was published on VKontakte today, this sort of social messaging app. And he said he set up a company called Concord, which then established Wagner Group. And Wagner Group was instrumental in Russia's seizure of part of Donetsk and Luhansk districts in 2014. And indeed, that's where fighting is going on right now. That's where Russia is staging, I shan't say holding, these plebiscites pursuant to the incorporation of these districts in the Russian Federation. Obviously, the results have been decided long ago. So these have been months in the planning, these referendums, but they were announced at just 3 days' notice, and voting is ongoing. But how can they do this in Donetsk when they control about 60% of the territory of Donetsk district? And even then, even in the bit they control, a lot of people have fled because they don't want to be killed or raped or robbed by the Russian army. The people Russia supposedly saving don't want to be saved by their saviors. They want to run away from them. Their saviors have killed so many of them. Even they haven't been killed, often their cities have been reduced to rubble. So Wagner is active all over the world, the Libyan civil war, fighting in the Syrian civil war, in the Central African Republic, it's been in Mozambique, Mali, goodness knows where else. Now, Russian law specifically prohibits the creation or maintenance of any mercenary body. However, the Russian law enforcement authorities have simply turned Nelson's eye to Wagner, which has operated openly for 8 years and has at least several thousand operatives. At times it may have been in the tens of thousands. They're usually former soldiers in the Russian army, occasionally the Belarusian army, Serbian army, or elsewhere, having done at least their 1 year military service. Often they've done a 5 year contract beyond that, so fairly experienced, seasoned soldiers can sign up. And it's good money, certainly very good by Russian standards, but it's danger money and you will fight. Because, of course, a career soldier could go an entire 20 or 30-year career without ever hearing a shot fired in anger, but they will be sent to danger spots. So this is hazardous duty. Anyway, so Prigozhin said he did this so as not to put these guys who are the foundation of the Russian patriotism under fire. Okay, so and he says that they fought in Syria and other Arab countries. He says they fought in Africa and indeed in Latin America. I didn't know about Latin America, but maybe these are the ones who were sent to Venezuela or something. So only I think it was this year, the Russian court in a defamation action brought by Prigozhin found against Alexei Venediktov, who was the chief editor of Echo Moskvy, one of the last independent radio stations in Russia, because Venediktov correctly said that Mr. Prigozhin is behind Wagner Group, and they found against Benediktov, and he had to pay ruinous damages. And earlier this year, in July this year, Lilia Yaparova, she was the Director General of Medusa, meaning jellyfish. She said yes, that Prigozhin is behind this, and asked him if he's involved in Wagner Group. So of course the courts are completely partial, and there's utterly unjust. And a few days ago, a video surfaced of Yevgeny Prigozhin going into prison and addressing prisoners, saying, "Why don't you join the army? And after 1 year's service, any sentence you've got will be written off. You'll be free. But if you desert, if you whatever go AWOL, you will be shot. So either you sign up to join the army, or your children will be." So that's this partial mobilization. Anyway, the mobilization is obviously not going remotely well. So because you'll have to cobble together these units, and Russia saying, well, if we can't have military skill or anything like that, we'll just have sheer numbers overwhelm them that way. We've got to arm and equip these people, but even if the sort of an unarmed if the sort of untrained rabble, the sheer numbers might do is what they're thinking of. But Putin just had to sack his logistics chief, and if your logistics can't supply 200,000 soldiers, how are they going to supply 600,000? Because you're wanting to send like something like another 400,000. Remember, that presidential decree that came out on the 21st of September had various paragraphs, and paragraph 7 still hasn't been published. So what does that say? Some people suspect the 300,000 call-up is the tip of the iceberg. It's going to be like 1 million or something like that. Remember, the potential pool is about 25 million men under the age of 35 have completed their military service, but there are lots of exemptions. Obviously, mentally and physically disabled, or exempt people in prison. They're trying to get into volunteer. Police officers, officers of the intelligence agencies, the Служба внешней разведки, that's the external intelligence agency, Главное разведка управления, that's main intelligence directorate, but they normally count as full-time military personnel. Or indeed, Федеральная служба безопасности, that's the Federal Intelligence Service, Security Service, which is for internal oppression. If you're married and your wife is more than 6 months pregnant, if you've got over 2 children, if you've got a disabled child, Orthodox clergy, I can't think who else is exempt. They say bankers, people who work for the state media, people in the IT sector, and so very wealthy and well-connected people, they don't have to do it. Okay, but some men who never had to do military service because they went to university or something, some of them are picked up when they're unsuitable. Those are over the age for conscription. Some of them have been drafted, so they're not obeying their own rules. And even in the Russian Duma, even the war hawks, they admit that mistakes have been made, but they're really not keen to join up. The Kremlin claimed that 10,000 men volunteered in one day. Lie, massive, massive lie. I don't know what it is, but it certainly won't be that, as they lie about everything. There might be a few recruits. I wouldn't be surprised if there were some recruits, but I don't think it's anything like 10,000. And of course, people are going for the exits. They say they're not going to close the border, but they said they weren't going to do loads of things. They said they weren't going to invade Ukraine. They said they weren't seeking to claim an inch of Ukrainian territory. They said they weren't going to send any conscripts into Russia. They said they weren't going to introduce general mobilization, and he's broken every promise he ever made about this. But even if you say close the border, Russia's got the biggest land border in the world. They're just unofficial crossing points they can cross into other countries. Okay, to Georgia, something like that's quite difficult. Latvia, Lithuania, that's quite difficult. But how about Mongolia? How about Kazakhstan? This border is so enormous. So Russia had to turn to an enormous prison, and then the Russian army's main job will be to keep its people in when they're running away. So much of them wanted to boost the population. Right, thanks so much for watching me. So make sure you subscribe on Patreon and donate on PayPal, georgecallahan79@gmail.com. Goodbye.